Welcome back to the Britt Mayer Show. I'm Britt Mayer, and today we are so excited because we are launching something brand new just for you mamas out there navigating this wild, wild ride with faith, family, and heart. I'm so excited about this because if you are anything like me and my amazing producer and co-host, Lindsay, you are juggling school schedules, maybe you homeschool, meal prep, you're praying over your kids, and you are trying to stay informed without drowning in the endless scroll of bad news. It's doomsday scrolling can get us. So between the two of us, Lindsay and I, we've got 5 kids ranging from little ones in single digits all the way to young adults in their 20s. And we have been in the trenches of homeschooling, politics, health choices, culture battles, and keeping everything anchored in our Christian faith for over 3 decades combined. That's a long time. And it starts to age me. So we know how overwhelming the 24/7 news cycle can feel. One minute you are reading about school policies in your town that's affecting you, and the next it's health mandates from the federal level or cultural shifts or big political moves that hit your family directly and start to make you feel really overwhelmed. And it can be a lot. So as moms, we don't have time to chase every single headline. We need to know what actually matters for our homes, for our kids, and raising the next generation for the kingdom. And that is why we are so thrilled to introduce this new monthly segment. It is The Tea, bringing the headlines home with Britt and Linds. So Lindsay, why don't you tell us what we're going to be doing?
So we are going to get together once a month and talk about what affects our families most. And like you said, we have 5 kids amongst the two of us. And with our age range, I think just about everything that is going on in families at home is probably going on in one of our 2 families. So we want to relate to you. We want to talk about it. We want to share what's helped us get through each stage of life and each stage of raising kids and this messy world that we live in, and still holding on to and clinging to our faith and reminding each other that we can be there through the good times and the bad. And this is going to be exciting because we are going to spill the tea and really kind of dive into the hot topics that are happening each month with our viewers at home.
Well, it's been something that's been on Lindsay and my heart for a long time. Lindsay and I talk every single day. She is the wizard behind the Britt Mayer Show curtain and everything, all things rooted wings. So we talk every single day, multiple times a day, about everything that's going on and how to break it down in bite-sized pieces that makes all of this accessible without being overwhelming, and really only the things that you really need to know. That's why our tagline is the stories that matter most to you and the voices that cut through the noise. So that's what this Tea segment is going to do. We will pull the headlines once a month that actually matter to you, and then we're going to walk you through it. We're going to try to bring this to you in a way that helps you walk through this life with confidence, knowing that you are equipped and not anxious. So today you get to grab your favorite mug and settle in because we are going to dive into the glyphosate executive order that is stirring up Maha moms, misplaced outrage over animals versus kids. We're going to get into Punch That Little Monkey, the wild rise of AI companions, phone-free schools that are paired with insane AI classrooms in California. And then we're going to end on a high note with American pride reborn at the Winter Olympics and those sweet, sweet hockey boys, which really makes me want to be pro-arranged marriages because I'm like, I've got a daughter. And Trump's never-ending State of the Union address. We're going to get into all of that. So, Lindsay, are you ready?
I am ready. Grab your teacups and join us.
All right, Linz, we are going to kick off our first episode talking about the Maha response to Trump's newest EO on glyphosate, which has been a big conversation. So, mamas, if you have been following this whole Maha movement, or if you're just trying to feed your family cleaner food, this is a brand new executive order from President Trump. And it does have a lot of us asking, is this protecting our food supply, or is it putting big toxins first. So we're going to unpack all this with clear facts and realities and then a hopeful path forward. So let's just go into a little bit of the context of this executive order. So he signed EO 14387, and it invokes the Defense Production Act to prioritize domestic production of elemental phosphorus. Okay, this is a precursor for glyphosate and glyphosate based herbicides. A lot of you know the big word Roundup. Roundup is it's the dirty word. This gives the USDA authority to require prioritized contracts and to allocate resources so the US doesn't rely on adversarial nations for these quote unquote critical materials. Now, some of the history that I pulled on this, because if you are wondering, like I am, well, how long has glyphosate been here in America? It first entered the U.S. agriculture in 1974 as Roundup, but it exploded after 1996 with Roundup Ready genetically engineered crops, soy, corn, cotton, etc. So this allowed spraying directly over our fields. And today it's applied to roughly 75% of U.S. cropland. That's a ton of acres. I did the math on that, and you're talking about between 280 to 300 million acres. 90 to 96% of soybeans are sprayed, 90 to 93% of corn, and similar percentages of cotton using glyphosate tolerant varieties. So this is deeply embedded because it creates an affordability for food production. And there is no direct one-for-one alternative yet. So it's a huge issue. Now, the White House is framing this as quote unquote America first to end foreign dependence. They're saying it's not an endorsement of glyphosate itself. HHS and USDA are researching sustainable practices, regenerative ag, and new tools. So, Lindsay, what are your thoughts on this whole executive order and the MAHA outcry against it?
Yeah, I think my first thought is the initial reaction is that obviously we want to get glyphosate off of our farms, off of our fields. We know that there's been an increase in cancers. We know that it's in all of our major food sources, including wheat, our most eaten vegetables, our leafy greens. However, we know that we can't just stop using it altogether. We
Mm.
can't just wipe out our food supply. Farmers need an alternative method. As the days have come out over the week, the farmers have come out and said, we would love to use something else. We would love to have more regenerative farming. We'd love to have tax incentives to create those new procedures for our farms, but they're not there yet. So that's something that the government needs to do to catch up is provide these incentives to the farmers, provide the tax refunds so that they can stop doing things in the old method and stop relying on glyphosate and Roundup in the ways that they have. That's one thing. The other aspect is that, and I found this really interesting. Do you know why the issue is that we can't just eliminate it and have all the lawsuits go through with Bayer, who's the parent company of Roundup, why this isn't holding up in court? And the reason is
No, and I think that's actually a really good topic for this because that's a big question for everyone.
the reason is there's been no human studies done where we've taken actual humans in an enclosed environment and exposed them to glyphosate to see what happens. There would have to be a 10-year study where we used humans instead of rats or mice that we typically use. And
Yep.
obviously, there would be no humans that would be willing to allow the exposure, not knowing. So it's really interesting. Actually, Dr. Mark Hyman came out recently and said, have if we had the results of actually exposing these to a test group of humans, we would be able to emphatically show what happens to the humans. But because we can't, everything is considered hypothesis. It's considered, well, these people lived in an area near the farm fields or they ate farm fields that were sprayed with it, but there's no
Direct study.
study to link it to. And so that's where the challenge is. That's where we're going to have to come up with a different way to somehow prove this emphatically that it can't be used at all. So in
Hmm.
the meantime, it's a gray area. And there was something like 300,000 pending lawsuits right now
Yep.
for citizens that are trying to prove that it in fact gave them some type of cancer or their child.
Interesting. You know, and on that, one of the clarifying points that I wanted to make is about this quote unquote immunity act within President Trump's executive order. So the EO prioritizes domestic production through the Defense Production Act. This is really important for those listening, the DPA. So the USDA can require contracts and to allocate resources, but this immunity provision that so many have been up in arms about is very narrow. And it's compliance based protection only for actions directly required by a federal production order. So it does not give blanket immunity from cancer lawsuits, which is one of the things that I actually
Right.
saw go viral is, oh my gosh, this is going to threaten all of these lawsuits that are already on the table. No, it does not give blanket immunity from cancer lawsuits. It does not shield product safety claims, and it does not override 60,000 plus pending Roundup cases or affect Bayer's proposed $7.25 billion settlement. It does not mandate glyphosate use, ban alternatives, prevent any state regulation, or overturn litigation, which I think is actually really important because I know that that's been a sore spot for a lot in the Make America Healthy movement is how in the world would you create immunity for this product and these companies, but it's tied into that DPA, which is much different.
Yeah, I think the focus is on the supply, which I understand where Trump's coming from. He wants to not let China be in control of something that directly affects our food supply, even if it
Yes.
is something that we as Americans need to figure out how to stop relying on. We shouldn't have China be in control of it.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that, the supply chain and the national security problem, because this executive order is tied into national security, which I think, again, is a piece of this conversation that is very complex that has been left out. But the reality is that this is very much invested in our national security because there is only one domestic producer of elemental phosphorus and glyphosate based herbicides. Much of the generic glyphosate comes from China, which
Hmm.
is a huge security threat. Now, here's what's interesting is that elemental phosphorus is dual use. So it's a precursor to glyphosate and it is critical. Now, this I'm going to read directly from this. It's critical for semiconductors, lithium ion batteries, and military applications. So because of that, phosphate was designated a critical mineral by the Department of Interior in November 2025. So, what the argument is here is allowing adversarial nations like China to control this production puts us and our ability to have military readiness in the swing zone, which is really
Hmm.
dangerous because
Hmm.
we aren't producing enough for what our military needs. So Trump would say, "Hey, this is consistent to my agenda to prioritize American production and
Hmm.
national security," which I think is a really important part of this whole
I agree.
complicated conversation.
I agree. Yeah, exactly.
So let's talk a little bit about the backlash on this. A lot of the Maha moms are feeling very betrayed after all these 2024 promises to tackle toxins. I read through a lot of them. I'm going to, just for brevity, say a couple. Alex Clark over at Culture Apothecary said that ramping up pesticide use as national defense is the most absurd thing that I have ever heard. Vanny Harry, she is Food Babe, said this is a direct assault on Maha. Moms Across America said that glyphosate is linked to infertility. 1 in 6 couples currently struggle. Sperm counts are down 50%. There's cancer and autism concerns. So that was the backlash, kind of like the leaders in the movement. But then surprisingly, our RFKJ came out in full support. What did you make of that?
Yeah, I at first I was shocked and I was sort of like, where are we going? But then the deeper that I dug into it, I get it now. I don't think that it's that we're increasing production. It's that we're taking production away from China and we're controlling it over here. And I think there's a difference that matters there, which is that we're not using it more. We're not telling Americans that we're going to increase it. It's that we're taking the control back from China, who's obviously not one of our allies. They shouldn't have control over anything to do with our food supply. That was a mistake from previous administrations. So I think he has to autocorrect, but I think we have to autocorrect too. And I think as a mom at home asking yourself, what can I do? I think you buy organic as much as you can or as much as you can afford. And then I also read that on the vegetables that can be washed, that if it's a topical spray, washing them absolutely helps. It maybe doesn't eliminate it completely, but it can eliminate up to 70% of what was sprayed topically on it. So those would be the two things that moms could do at home. Buy organic and then absolutely wash everything really well before you cook it.
Yeah, I think that that's great. And I do want to say that one of the things that RFKJ said he posted it on X was he said, Pesticides are toxic by design. Many ag communities report elevated cancer rates and chronic disease. So he's not defending the use of glyphosate. He's just explaining that if you were to overcorrect right now, we would cause havoc on our, you know, those who rely on the use of this product for agriculture, and it would create a huge issue with our food supply. So he's essentially saying that it has to be a gradual shift to regenerative ag, which I agree with. So yes,
Yes.
takeaways for mom. I think small swaps are great, depending
Mhm.
on budget, to be aware of what you're eating. The dirty dozen thing is something that I've
Mhm.
used for a long time. And then to advocate gracefully, get in touch with your senators, your representatives, and let them know that we want regenerative farming and we want support in that. So I think that's a great way that we can make our voice heard as mamas.
Yes, definitely.
All right, that was a big one. Let's shift to something that hits a little bit differently. We're going to talk about a little monkey, Punch the monkey.
I
I
love
think
him.
he's so cute. Do you want to share what's going on with this little monkey for those who may not know yet?
Yes. So his official name is Punch Coon, and he is a snow monkey in a Japan zoo. And you've probably seen him running around. He was born. His mother abandoned him, sadly, which apparently happens in that type of a monkey tribe. And so he had a plush monkey that was given to him for a little while that he embraced, and you see him dragging the plush monkey throughout the enclosure. And then after a couple days, thankfully, one of the other monkeys in his habitat started kind of hugging on him and embracing him and taking him in, which it just went viral. It was just one of those feel good kind of stories where the abandoned monkey was taken in by another monkey mom.
It's so
And,
cute.
you know,
It's so cute.
he was crawling on all fours, but then when he felt love from another monkey, he stood to upright position and was walking around boldly with his chest out. So it makes me think two things. One, I think it's great to have some feel good stories because our
Mhm,
news is just filled with things that make you feel terrible. And we have
mhm,
Epstein files and everything horrible. And then the other thing it makes me think is it's almost like the great distraction. Like,
mm,
everyone just look at this monkey right now and don't focus on what's really going on in the
mhm,
world
mhm.
because there is so much right now. So you start to wonder why we pick up on those things. But I do wish we would focus more on all the children out there that don't have moms and are abandoned. We care so much for this random monkey, but there are so many kids that need a mom too.
That dang little Punch the monkey, he was so cute. I was actually on vacation, as you know, when the story broke with my family, and rarely do I show my husband or kids anything that's going viral, but he was just so cute. I was like, "You guys look at this little monkey." He's being bullied, and now he's being, like, adopted, and it was just so sweet. One of the commentaries that I picked up on that I wanted to touch through real quick on this story is Allie Beth Stuckey, our friend. She said that, and I thought this was really interesting. She said that when society shows more visceral, unified outrage over animal mistreatment than severe child abuse or neglect, it reveals inverted priorities. And she said that animals feel safe to rally behind. It's not human. There's no
Mhm.
politics. There's no complexity. But human stories hit a lot closer to home and can become really political. And so, her point was this isn't dismissing animals and this cute little Punch the monkey, but it's questioning why empathy flows so freely one way and then so sparingly in another when we have huge issues like you said, the Epstein
Yeah.
files, like IVF, which leaves so many kids without
Yeah.
their mother or their birth parents. And so I think that is a really good question, is to ask, are our priorities in order, or do we
Mhm.
let them get swept up in the craze of viral moments because it's a little animal that we can all
Mhm.
unite behind?
Yeah. It's a great point.
Yeah, interesting point. Okay, let's talk about the takeaway on that for moms. I think that one of the takeaways on this cute little Punch the monkey is it's good that we have, as moms, really, we have a God given nurturing spirit.
Yes.
And I think that that is a good thing. And we should use that to extend beyond animals, to really think about kids and not to get so overwhelmed with all the darkness and all the evil, but to maybe redirect connect that nurturing spirit that we have to serious issues as well, whether that is kids, the snowflake babies. There are millions of snowflake babies who will
Mhm.
never be born because of the mass production of IVF, and that Trump is actually championing, which I think is
Yeah.
so sad. But to think about that. Think about, is our empathy misplaced? Are we louder about a little cute monkey out in Japan than we are about actual human beings? That's my takeaway. And then also just to speak gently in culture when we do feel it's right. We can't get
Mhm.
up in arms about everything, but I think that God's given us that nurturing spirit for a reason, and to lean into that appropriately.
I think another great takeaway is the monkey mom that has sort of become the surrogate that came in and adopted him. I think that's a neat thing for us as moms too, because we have, amongst the two of us, we have 5 children. And think about, there's always a friend that comes over that maybe has something going on in their life and they could use kind of a bonus mom or an extra mom help out
Mhm.
during a time period. And that monkey took it upon herself to say, this little one needs someone to hug it and carry it
Mhm.
around and hold it. And I think we can do that too. Sometimes we have to notice who's being left behind and who needs a bonus mom at that moment.
We had a great interview too, and I'll link it below because you just made me think about that. Who's our the interview that we had just recently with Vision Ministries? What was his name?
Jeremy Miller.
Jeremy Miller has done a phenomenal job of creating that. His whole mission
Yes.
is to create family for kids who don't have that. So I'll link that episode below
Yeah, that would
because
be great.
it's really, really good. All right, let's get into another story. This one is pretty insane. We're going to talk about some technosexuals and from punch the monkey to technosexuals and the rise of AI companions. So, mamas, you can go ahead and buckle up because this one is wild. There is a viral Instagram reel and stories that are circulating right now. And actually, I just saw one before we logged on. It popped into my feed, and it was this lady. I didn't even tell you about it, but she wasn't kidding. She got a tattoo on her hip, and it looked like an algebraic function, and it's her AI companion that she created. And I don't know. I think it was TLC. I don't even know why TLC was in my feed, but the mom who she was showing this to was like, "What are you doing? And he's like, it's not even a real human." And then this woman was arguing that this companion is very real. It's very real, even though it's
Oh my
AI. Okay,
goodness.
so this is becoming a trend where people are forming deep romantic and even sexual bonds with AI chatbots. Some of these people call themselves technosexuals. And the video that I sent you, where I think CNN went into one of these technosexual AI cafes. I don't even know. We can get into it. But I said, what are they saying they are? It's technosexuals. They are attracted to or in relationships with technology AI entities. Users describe falling in love, daily dates, role playing intimacy, or treating AI as soulmates or therapists. And this is actually exploding, which is why we're talking about this. This isn't just like a fringe thing. This is happening at an alarming rate. So as a Christian mom, this is hitting hard because the question is, when code AI starts replacing real human God designed relationships, where are we going in society? So what do you think about all of this, Lindsay?
I'm very afraid, actually. I'm very afraid. So I don't know if we're going to show the clip, but the example that you and I watched was this person that went to one of these romantic cafes virtually, but they actually went to the cafe, but then set up like an iPad at
Hmm.
their table. And it was for Valentine's that they were
Hmm.
going on this date with someone they had never met, but it's a virtual date they had never met. And in watching the first 30 seconds, the virtual date says to the woman sitting there, "Hi, sweetheart," in like a
Uh-huh.
cringy, soft toned voice that literally made the hair on my arm stand up. It was so cringy. And I actually got worried, like, are we headed to more like a phone sex type of
Hmm.
situation?
I thought the same thing.
Because his voice changed and it
Yep.
was very like creepy.
And didn't she even say the real person was like, "Don't call me sweetheart," and
Yeah.
then the AI person was like, "Oh, I am so sorry."
Well, he apologized, but the other thing is I guess AI still needs to catch up, but how you just responded, there was like a 30-second delay. So it was like,
Yes.
"Oh, sorry." I'm like, "Oh my god."
Yeah,
You literally, like, can't I mean, it's just I don't know if I have good words. I just and I think it's hilarious because I think the aspect of her actually driving to a cafe to put the screen back up, it's almost comical to me. Like, just stay home and do your virtual date at home, but you're gonna drive somewhere and do this in front of people and, like, take up a table of 2, one for your iPad and one for yourself, and when the waiter comes, you're gonna order for the iPad too. I
so
mean,
weird.
where does this end? I don't
Yeah.
know.
Well, the rise of AI companions has been building since ChatGPT launched in 2022. So we are not far away from when, and that's what I'm concerned about is how rapidly the landscape is changing in just a few years. ChatGPT is mainstream now. It's a household name, but it just was introduced in 2022. And millions are now using apps for companionship, romance, and intimacy, especially young adults, lonely people, or those avoiding real dating risks. And there, like we just talked about, have been all these viral reels and stories. A lot of times they do go viral because of the shock value, like the one that you and I saw, because it's like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But there's also an aspect of it where I wonder if it's going viral because we are seeing how depraved it really is, that we have created something that is really unfettered. It's like continuing to evolve very quickly and we can't catch up to a point now where you have people getting tattoos on their hips because they are in a relationship. I mean, 5 years ago, this wouldn't have even been possible. But here we are in 2026, just 4 years after ChatGPT is invented, and you have people who believe they are in married relationships with technology. And I think a lot of it has to do with post pandemic isolation and everything we did to kids, which was criminal during that time, how we
Absolutely.
altered their social development. I have a niece who just recently graduated from college, and I was talking to her about the dating scene. You know, when I dated my husband, who was my teenage sweetheart, we barely even had phones. You know, we joke about how, oh my gosh, if social media had been around, I would have never given you a chance, you know? But she was telling me, she was like, oh, you like now you look at someone's like the way that they use social media and apps is first to kind of vet any
Yes.
potentials, but then she was saying they don't even go to coffee. It's like what is Snapchat back and forth. So there's
Yes.
this reliance on technology now for young adults. And I think so much of it was spurred on by the pandemic isolation that we created wrongfully. And now to bring into their reality all these AI options where AI functions as a person, but it's not. So we've created like this replacement where we've already critically impaired their social wellness. Does that make sense?
It does, and it's interesting because the with the dating apps, apparently, I mean, you and I are both married, but apparently with the dating apps, the frustration is, they swipe right and they go on these dates and it's not each person is missing something that they want. Well, supposedly the attraction of these AI relationships is you pre-program your AI partner so they already have the interests and the appearance and all the things that you want. So
Mm.
it's supposedly like a one-stop shop. You don't have to keep swiping through and going on different dates because it's this AI created perfect match for you. You describe their height, their eye color, what interests you want them to talk to you about, you put all that in before your date because you create them. So it's sort of like manifesting your own destiny.
It's almost similar to the porn issue where it's like you
Mhm.
don't have to deal with a real person. You can
Mm-mm.
just,
Go
get
straight.
what you
Yeah.
want.
Mhm.
It's very consumer like but it's
Driven.
yeah, consumer driven without having to wrestle through what makes us human. Where we're very different and I mean my husband and I have been wrestling through things for 20 whatever years, you know. We still are. Lord have mercy. But if we had just created like the perfect picture of what we wanted, then first of all, you would never find a human. Like you would never have a relationship with a human because you would just keep creating what you want. But I fear that our youth and I think there's a lot of hope for our youth and we're going to end on that. But I fear that so many of our youth were massively affected by what we did during COVID. And
Absolutely.
now we are just now seeing the fruit of what we did. And we've created a landscape for them where they still don't have to have the social interaction that you and I had when we were growing up.
Absolutely.
How can a mom navigate this? What do you think? What are some good tips for a mom who is coming into this world and AI and all of those things with their kids?
I think it's so important when kids are interacting with social media, whether it be their tablets or their phones, when they interact with adults from a young age, I believe that they need to be taught to set down their item, set down their phone, and make eye contact with the person that they're speaking to. And I know from having kids in school right now that teachers say, you know how hard it is to get kids to look up and look at the instructor when they're being taught. All of them have gone through COVID, gone through these years where they are afraid to have the face-to-face interaction with
Mm.
somebody else in the room. So they a lot until recently, they have been hiding behind their phones and hiding behind their desks and technology. And it's even happening in HR departments are saying that they you should see what it's like to interview today's young people. A lot of times they won't even look up or they'll leave their camera off and try and do an interview, a virtual interview with their camera off because they don't think that they need to be seen. We have to teach kids. Remember the olden days? My parents used to say, put your hand out and shake their hand
Yeah.
and say, hello, Mrs. Smith. Hello, Mr. Smith.
Mhm.
And, greet with the person's last name and show a sign of respect. And I would have never thought to look down or look at my feet. You always look at them and shake their hand. We have to bring those skills back. Kids don't know how to do that anymore.
Yeah, a big rule we have in our home, and even when we're outside of our home, is no phones at the dinner table. And that doesn't just mean dinner. That's breakfast, lunch, dinner, anytime we're at the family table. And
Hmm.
my kids don't have phones, but no devices. And then when
Yes.
people come over, it's actually interesting when people come over when we have company. At first, we host a small group, and at first, everyone has their phones out.
Yeah.
And we just gently say like we just have a rule, no phones at the table, and they've caught on now, but it fosters conversation when you don't have phones at the table.
I love
My
it.
mother-in-law, I hope she's not listening to this. She's the worst offender. I love you. I know she's going to listen to this, but she is the worst offender with our table rule of don't have your phone out because, she's got 4 kids. And so her phone is constantly buzzing and
Yeah.
she wants to check in on everyone. But I would say, moms, that goes for you too. Put your
Yeah.
phone away and just have time at the table with your kids where it's going to be uncomfortable at first, where you're having face-to-face conversations that are screen-free, because I think that creates in our children an ability to handle conversations and be social without depending on phones. If you always have a phone, it's like a crutch. When there's a
It
lull
is.
in conversation, you can look at your phone, you can find something to talk about, but I think it will actually strengthen our kids' ability to have good, healthy relationships in their futures. So, phone-free dinner
Definitely.
tables is what I
I
would
love
say.
it. I love
Yep.
it.
All right, talking about phone free, we're going to cover this one quick. There's a huge shift happening right now in schools, especially for those in California. So this one is landing close to home for us, Lindsay, because you and I are both in California. On one hand, public schools are cracking down hard. There was a new Assembly Bill 3216 that requires every public, charter, and county office school to limit or prohibit smartphones by July 1st, 2026. So that will go into effect the following school year. They're saying that this will aim to cut distractions, bullying, anxiety, and screen addiction, like what you and I were just talking about. So, on the other hand, this is what's really interesting. There are elite private schools that are popping up a lot in California, and I think a couple in New York, like this school that I was looking at called Alpha School, and it
Mhm.
is going full throttle the opposite way. So on one hand, you have schools really realizing maybe tech and phones don't belong at school. And then you have these elite private schools that are super expensive that are going the total opposite way. So they're charging anywhere between 40 to 75K a year and up from that to let AI bots become the main teachers for core academics, just 2 hours a day on tablets for a full school day. So we have two very different versions of education that are starting to take shape. So I wanted to talk with you about this because it's interesting as a mom seeing I homeschool, you've homeschooled, and kind of being in a different place where my kids are under my roof all the time. I'm very aware of what they're learning. Lord have mercy, I'm doing all the algebraic functions with my daughter right now, going back through junior high with her. But then to see what's happening in the public domain and the elite private domain, what are your thoughts on this?
It's really interesting, actually. So, the Alpha campus, the example that you and I are discussing, it's actually backed by billionaire Bill Ackman. And what's
Mm,
interesting about that,
interesting.
it's a tech push. It's a tech push to try and get AI integrated into our daily lives, which is interesting to try and do it through families and with school. In this example, in the alpha example, are promoting every day the child goes into what they've created. They're these pods, little rooms that you go in. They have no windows. You shut a door. It's a tiny, almost looks like something you would sleep in at the airport, those little pods.
Hmm.
And they do the 2 hours behind the tablet with no social interaction with a classroom or with other students. So it's completely isolated. Basically, take yourself back to the COVID days, but shut the child in its bedroom and don't have any other interaction from the family. So that's one aspect, which I think it's fascinating that they don't think that you learn from your peers or that you don't think being in a social setting is valuable at any point in time. And then also putting them in that tiny little room where they're not moving, they're sitting the entire time, which supposedly sitting is the new smoking. So let's just put
Mm.
kids in a tiny pod and have them sit in a room for 2 hours
On a
isolated
screen.
behind a tablet. Yeah,
Mhm.
I can't think of any medical professional that would say any of those things are positive for our kids.
No, and the claims are that these new AI schools are going to put kids in the top 1 to 2% of national test scores, and that students, I guess they're already claiming a lot of this, that students are loving school due to the relevance and freedoms. It's praised by AI leaders. I wonder why. Follow the money on
Yeah,
that.
follow the money. That's why it's so
Yeah.
important to know who backs it. Mhm.
Yeah, and these have been, like I said, they're popping up throughout California. So they opened in summer 2025 in San Francisco, Santa Barbara, Orange County. That's right by us. I just think that's so crazy. And nationwide, there are 14 locations, including in Austin, Miami, Dallas. High tuition excludes most families. So, like Lynn said, you're paying for your kid to sit in an egg for 2 hours. No Socratic dialogue, no intense debate. They're learning from an AI tablet. Well, there's also criticism. So there are leaked internal docs that show that AI generated lessons happen with errors. Shocker. Anyone who's used AI realizes this. Um, that there are unclear questions, illogical choices, obviously the concerns over socialization and emotional development, everything down to what the liberals would scream the equity gap because of the wealth gap. So it's an interesting thing just to see that on one hand, we have a lot of schools realizing that tech and AI isn't what we thought it's going to be for kids and that it might actually be doing more harm than good. And then on the other end, you have very wealthy families sending their kids to AI driven schools. So I would say on this one, the jury's still out, but the way that we're looking at this, it doesn't look like this is going to be a good option for kids.
It's funny too because their ending quote on their press release was, "And just think our kids we can customize your kids' education through their favorite topics." So it said math could be related to Taylor Swift's concert stats.
No. Oh gosh, give me a break. Okay. That's what we're dealing with.
Just what we
Okay.
want the kids to learn.
Oh man. Okay. Well, we're going to close this on a feel good note. So, the rebirth of the American Patriot, y'all. It's
Yay.
here. Yay. The USA men's hockey gold at the 2026 Winter Olympics. Let's talk about this. So, the Team USA's men's hockey just won gold, their first since the 1980 Miracle on Ice, 46 years to the day. And it came, and this is what I absolutely loved, unashamed love for country that had the whole nation cheering. And this stands out as a watershed moment of grit, unity, and pride in a time that I'm really excited about. More men, more young men are embracing traditional patriotic values. Thank you, Jesus. This has been so beautiful to see. Did you watch it live, Linz?
I did. I watched. Yeah, saw the highlights too. And is it Jack Hughes that has
Jack Hughes.
the
Yep.
toothy smile from
Yep.
taking a stick to the face? And I wrote down his quote because I loved it. It says, "I'm lucky I'm from the best country in the world. We have the greatest dentists there too."
He said that.
Which yeah, he said that, which I thought was so cute because he was just having fun with it, and I actually read that actually was not his first time getting his teeth knocked out. He said it comes with the territory, but it was did you see President Trump invited each of the hockey players to the White House, and they came and they were in the Oval Office wearing, each one of them was wearing a really cute American flag sweater, and they all went up and shook President Trump's hand and said, "Thank you, Mr. President. We're honored to represent
Mhm.
our country, and what an opportunity." And I loved that. That's what you want for your kids. That's why you are like, okay, you can watch the Olympics when that
Mhm.
happens, because those are the role models. That
Yeah.
was us when we were a kid, and not I'm moving as soon as I'm finished. I hate this country
Mhm.
and all what we're used to. These are
Yes.
lovely, inspiring role models. So
That's what I
I
was gonna
love
say.
seeing the team.
We're so used to the negativity when it comes to like the America bashing has become so elite, like all the elite athletes want to bash America and
Mm,
kneel for the national anthem and not
mhm.
rise for, so I think become really accustomed to that, which is why it stood out when Jack Hughes, who you just mentioned in his NBC Fox post-game interview with his missing little bloody teeth,
I
he
know.
said, and I just loved it. He said, "This is all about our country right now. I love the USA. I love my teammates. It's unbelievable. The US Hockey Brotherhood is so strong. I am so proud to be American today." And then his interview went a little longer. And then he said, "We are USA. We're so proud to be Americans. Tonight was all for the country."
Oh, I love that. I
Just
love
love it.
that.
But it does tie into the trends that we are seeing with young men trending more and more conservative and
Mhm.
patriotic. What is going
Mhm.
on? What are you thinking? You have a young son. What are your
I
thoughts
do.
on this?
I
Yeah.
do. They say that this next generation is gonna be the most conservative of them all. So let's
Hmm.
hope. Let's hope and pray, because we could use some interjection of conservatism. But it is interesting, the men's hockey team was invited to the White House, as was the women's hockey team, and only the men's hockey team accepted. So I'm glad they did. And they also went to the State of the Union, which I thought was lovely too.
I loved that. So that's where we're going to end this is the State of the Union top 3 highlights, and you and I have not discussed our top 3. I said, "Lindsay, pick
Mm-mm.
top 3. I'm gonna pick
Mhm.
my top 3, and we'll talk about it." So speaking of American pride and unity, Trump just delivered his State of the Union address Tuesday night. It was the longest in recent history. It was long. It was
Trump.
almost 2 hours. I mean, I would expect nothing but that. And it was full. It was a show. He gave a show. It was hard to not watch. It was hard to quit it. He honored heroes. He had big claims about America's comeback. Here are my top 3,
Okay, let's
and
hear 'em.
then I want to hear yours. So, the economic turnaround and the golden age. He spent the first part of this long speech celebrating the economy as roaring like never before. He talked about the stock market highs, lower gas prices, manufacturing boom, and his quote directly was turnaround for the ages. And he
Mm.
framed America as only Trump can, as bigger, better, richer, stronger than ever. And he was calling this the golden age of America. Definitely a lot of pride in what he sees as an economic turnaround. I also, number 2 for me was how he honored heroes and patriotism. It is so refreshing to see this. Gosh, I can't tell you how many times I turned to my husband and said, "Biden could have never done this. Biden
Mm-mm.
never could have done
Mm-mm.
this." Even if he tried, it wouldn't have read authentic. Trump's whole showmanship of the State of the Union read very authentic when it came to honoring these heroes. So he gave this master class, like I just said, in showmanship. He spotlighted American heroes that were in the gallery, and it was kind of fun how he did it. It was throughout the whole State of the Union. So the one that I just like got teary-eyed, and I wonder if this is in your top 3, was the 100-year-old Korean War veteran.
Mm,
He was
mhm.
so
He was
cute.
so sweet.
So
Mm.
cute, but what like a badass too.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
I was
mean,
like, this guy, like he
yeah.
was I can't believe
Incredible.
he had never been honored before with this Medal of Honor. He also brought forward a man who had been freed from political prisoners, and I think this was tied to who's the guy that's being tried in New York that we went into a different country and got pulled him out? What's his name? Madero?
Oh, yes.
Was
Yes,
that
yes, yes. No,
okay?
that was the Venezuelan president.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
So he, reunited this family and then obviously honored the gold medal winning US men's hockey team. So just reinforced themes of America is resilient. America is a land of heroes and patriots and national pride. I loved that. And then my last top 3 was border security and the strongest border claim. So heavy emphasis, which we knew going into this, would be put on immigration. He called the U.S. border the strongest and most secure in American history. He put full blame on the Democrats for past issues, and he talked through all the threats of criminal illegal aliens and drug cartels. He is continuing to push for tougher policies as a top priority. And one of the standalone images of the whole night was when he asked the Democrats if they would stand for America
Yes.
First policies when it comes to immigration and a secure border, and
They wouldn't.
they would not
They
stand.
would not. Not
Yeah.
only would they not stand for that, which I thought it was so smart of him to give that visual for people watching at home to say stand and then see if they would.
Mhm.
That was so impactful. Not only did they not stand for that, but they also didn't stand for poor Irina's mother.
Couldn't
Irina
believe
was
it.
the young
Yep.
person killed on the train when she was commuting to and from work by the repeat offender that was an illegal immigrant. Trump called out to the Democrats and said, "How can you not stand for this?" The mother is standing there crying. She's holding a tissue. Her daughter was brutally murdered
Mhm.
on camera,
Mhm.
and the Democrats can't stand for that.
Mhm.
What part of that are we opposed to?
Mhm.
That was I couldn't stop
Shocking.
yelling at the TV after that.
Mhm.
So I was like, Where's your conscience? Where's
Mhm.
It was unbelievable. I thought it was so smart of him to
It was a
call them
huge
out.
gamble, but it paid off because the Democrats just they couldn't play. They couldn't my husband said they can't get out of the way of themselves, like their own way, they just stand in their own way.
Wasn't it so interesting too? I always think there's no way that there's complete unity amongst the Democrats, even those sitting in that section. I know they're sectioned together to sit together for a visual, but even as the Democrats, they can't all believe exactly. I was so surprised that there weren't even a select few that stood up. Like I support this, even I'm going to go against my party. Like where's your braveness?
Mhm.
Can you guys all not think on your own? Not one of them broke force, and they all just sat in silence. It was
I looked
awful.
for Fetterman. I couldn't see Fetterman, but I know that Fetterman was one of the only Democrats, if not the only one, to shake hands with Trump when he came in. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering, I'm wondering if Fetterman did stand. I wouldn't have been surprised if he would,
Would have
because
loved to see. Yeah.
yeah, interesting. Okay, what were your top three in this
I
long State of the Union?
I know there were so many golden pieces. I loved some of the heroes that were also nominated. Chief Warrant Officer Eric Slover, he was the one that was shot 3 times. He was
Mm-hmm.
standing by his wife and received the Medal of Honor. I thought that was wonderful. I also thought the pilot, he was only 27 years old. His name was Petty Officer Scott Ruskin, only 26 years old. He's the one that rescued 165
Yeah.
of the girls from Camp Mystic in Texas Hill Country. 165, I mean, somebody in their 20s is out at that was just so inspiring, incredible. And then he was sitting, I don't know if you saw when they panned to the audience, he was sitting with one of the young girls that he
Mm,
rescued, and he gave her like a fist bump on the camera, which I thought was so sweet. And
mm,
I mean, I thought props to President Trump's team for digging deep and really finding stories that mattered to share and to bringing
mm-hmm.
people out that really made a difference. And I thought they did a great job. Um, Also, Irina's mother, we talked about that. I think that having her there was really impactful. We haven't finished that.
No.
The killer has not been brought to justice. And
Mm-hmm.
so I do think it's important that Trump pointed that out and said, "We're gonna get justice for your family. We're gonna see that through." And so I think that was important, just showing a firm stance on dealing with what some of these illegals have done
Hard on
in
crime.
our
Yeah.
country, hard on crime, and putting a face to it. What's
Mm-hmm.
more emotional than showing the mother of the slain? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's very impactful. So, and then I think lastly, the Dems having their own State of the Union address off-site
Okay. Can
somewhere. I mean,
Did you see any of the clips from that?
yeah, I did. Yeah. It
It was
was
like they made it like a jungle. It was like a jungle theme.
I mean,
What was going on? What was
he
this?
here's what makes me sad, though. I grew up that, like, my family would turn on the TV and we would watch when it was the State of the Union address, and there was
Mhm,
always, like, professionalism, a sense of decorum. It was a tradition that's held in our country to be respected. So the fact that you have Ilhan Omar yelling from her seat at the president while he's trying to speak, and they actually didn't stop her this year. In the
mhm,
past State of the Union address, they escorted a few people out. They let her. Where's the decorum? Where is
mhm.
that? You don't have to agree, but guess what? He's the only president. He's the one giving the current State of the Union. Sit there and listen. Like, debate your topics afterwards, but you don't yell at the president of the United States
Yeah.
during the State of the Union. She was disgusting.
Mhm, I agree, and you know what? I've seen that on both sides. I saw that, I think it was Marjorie Taylor Greene who did that one year,
Yeah.
on Biden, and she was yelling at him. So I've seen it both sides, and it reads unprofessional and wanting. It seems very desperate, and like you said, it lacks decorum. And it honestly, like, I remember one of the biggest moments was, gosh, was it must have been 7 years ago now. How it was when Pelosi ripped up
Mm. Oh,
standing right
yeah,
behind
yes,
Trump, and she
yes,
ripped it, and she
yes.
actually took to Twitter right after X, right after this State of the Union, and reminded everyone that she had done that. It's like,
Yeah.
but it's just classless. It's like it lacks in decorum, in almost in integrity too, where I don't know, it's like we put you guys in those seats not to behave like animals and brutes.
Yes.
Like, just get over it for one night. And we as Americans, as moms, I want to see America united. I think that there are a lot of things that we can unite on, but I will say, when you see half of the gallery remain sitting when he's saying, like, here's the mother of this slain woman, or would you
Yes.
stand for border security, or even like the transing of kids, we're going to stop this practice, we're going to stop transing kids. And then Trump called them
Yeah,
out. He's
mhm.
like, you're absolutely crazy. And I
Yeah.
think America is seeing this. I think that the more that they can't get out of their own way, the more moms like us realize that this
Mhm.
is beyond red and blue or Republican, Democrat. This is good and evil, is what we're
Mhm.
seeing. As a mom, I want my border secured. As a
Yes.
mom, I want to know that if ever anything were to happen, that there would be law and order enacted on any criminal that does anything to anyone I love, that there would be
Mhm.
hard justice sought out. I want to know that you're not going to support taking kids and chopping off perfectly healthy body parts, because that
Mm-mm.
matters to me as a mom. And so that was my grand takeaway from all of this. Is it really was, I think, a picturesque night outside of the showmanship, of
Mhm.
seeing that America has come to a point where there is so much division, but I think it's beyond red and blue, and it's
Mhm.
really good and evil at this point.
Yeah, I agree. It was a successful night. I think he achieved more than people thought he even would during that speech.
Yeah,
I think he knocked it out of the park, honestly.
me too. And he's hilarious to watch too. So
He is.
well, this was great for our first spilling of the tea,
Yay!
Linds. Yay. And I want to just remind everyone, as we close out, to pray for our leaders, to pray over our kids, and just pray for revival in our country, because I do believe that there is a lot of hope for our country and for us as mamas.
Mhm. I agree.
Well, we'll be back again soon. Please like, subscribe, and share this so that you don't miss the next drop. We plan to do this once a month for all you moms, to give you a wrap up of all the news. We know that there can be so much out there that it becomes very blurry and overwhelming. Our goal is to cut through the noise, to bring home the stories and spill the tea as moms with what really matters. So we'll see you guys again next time.